So, the astrology of September, as I see it, we've been working towards a goal. We've decided that we will meet the goal. It's a little weird because we wanted to meet that goal many, many years ago. But I think we stopped in our tracks. We thought the goal was like way too big, and way too big in a sense that it couldn't fit into the structure of our reality. I think this eclipse season that actually started last March of 2025, kicked our butts to go back and actually complete that goal. I think that that goal had two parts to it. I think there was something very creative. I think there's something very spiritual about the goal, but I do think it takes a lot of detailed focus. The spiritual or creative part of this situation became too much. I don't think that we were actually feeling insecure in our technical capacity. In our understanding of our ability to meet this goal, I don't think we thought we were unable to technically do it. I think there was a disbelief that we had that amount of connection, love, space, which is infinite space. We had disbelief that that was real. I think what's happening this month in September is we are coming back to complete ourselves in this storyline. And specifically, I think it comes down to articulating the truth as we see it with precision. All of this hinges on the Virgo Pisces axis that lights up our new and full moon this month of September, which makes them eclipses. I don't think that we're meant to achieve one end goal. And actually, this month specifically with the full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces, the full culmination is actually limitless. It's never ending. And I think that the goal, if there is one at this point in time, is to erase goals, redefine how we move through life in a continuous exploration, continuous growth that doesn't mean continuous accumulation. We need to refine what we hold on to, which means that it's up to us what we decide to process. It's up to us what we decide to linger our attention on. That dance is what I see happening in September. The reason I think we had a difficult time accepting how big that dream was in the last few years, I think it's because Jupiter passed through Pisces, which expanded our connection to that realm. But then Saturn followed. So right after Jupiter left Pisces, Saturn came into Pisces and started trying to crystallize everything. And if we weren't in a place of authority or maturity around this Pisces area of life, depending on where it is in your chart, we were going to feel really restricted, like really, really shut down. At some point, losing parts of a foundation that weren't stable. And I think now that Saturn has been in Pisces for a long time, it's back in Pisces for all of September. We're tuning back into how limitlessness can be a ground for us, or rather, limitlessness is the ground right now. That's the ground that we're supposed to be learning from. That's the boss, is Pisces from September 1st for several months into 2026, into February of 2026. So there is a need this month to trust God. And I mean that in whatever way that makes sense for you. Trust yourself, because the ruler of Pisces right now and for all of September is still Neptune in Aries, which is the truth in yourself. So this month is still about you kind of being center stage here. But right now it's about you dealing with where you shut yourself down in the past because things got too big and unbelievable. And so maybe you just lost all the footing that you had before, or you had to completely find a new ground to stand on. And that new ground has been you. Like, what is your lowest common denominator, essentially? So here are my highlights. The things that are not changing this month are the fact that Saturn will be in retrograde all month and it will be in Pisces all months. So the other thing is that this whole month, Jupiter will be moving direct in Cancer all month. And then the other thing that's not changing all month is that Pluto is retrograde in Aquarius, which means that we are in this accelerated moment of tuning into our desired audience. That's loaded. Okay. I say that like it's easy to say you have a desired audience. Well, it's not just that. Pluto in Aquarius is about the complete transformation of humanity. So this is society completely regenerating itself over the next 20 years. Pluto is here for good now for 20 years. But okay, there is something shifting with Pluto this month, which is its ruler, Uranus. Uranus is in Gemini and it goes retrograde this month, and it will be in Gemini all month, but it shifts directions. And so Uranus goes through its acceleration process this month. In Gemini, this is an acceleration of communication, an acceleration of the language and data that we use to be curious about life. And it's that curiosity that actually rules the plutonic transformation that we are in right now. You could say Uranus and Gemini is like the AI tools that are changing the definition of what a human is. The next thing changing is that Mars, basically all the other planets shift. And that's kind of normal. The inner planets move quite quickly, so they shift signs pretty regularly. Mars will complete its time in Libra and enter the sign of Scorpio in the final week of this month. Venus will complete its time in Leo and then enter the sign of Virgo in the third week of this month. Mercury enters Virgo, completes Virgo, and enters Libra in the third week of this month. Mercury is moving very, very quick. So there's a lot of mental energy this month, fast. And then as usual, the sun will complete Virgo season this month and enter Libra at the last week of this month. We have several other notable transits I wanted to touch on here. The first being the fact that Uranus goes retrograde in Gemini on September 5th, which I mentioned right up here, but that is certainly a notable transit. The next is that full moon. So we'll have Uranus retrograde the first week and the lunar eclipse in Pisces in the first week. And then in the second week, we'll have the sun pass the south node. This is really important to me. I really take the south node very seriously in my astrological practice. The next thing I'm excited about is the Venus-Mars last quarter sextile happening on September 15th, right in the middle of the month. After that is when the Virgo new moon eclipse happens on September 21st. At that point, right after that new moon, the sun will enter Libra because that new moon happens at the very last degree of Virgo. Sun enters Libra, and then we have this air trine activation really hitting off. And then the final transit is really Mars entering Scorpio and forming a last quarter square to Pluto on September 24th. So I read any retrograde as an acceleration. Uranus as a planet is about your individuation and your own personal intelligence. When it goes retrograde, our individuating experiences accelerate. And these specific experiences, as they are in Gemini, are around how you use language and how that language changes your community or audience. This is a more tangible reading, a more personal reading perhaps of this transit, because we're not going to feel the full effects of how the definition of humanity is changed in 1 month, but this month will be an acceleration of how we are connecting to community based on what we're saying, simply what we're saying out of our mouths. The next transit I want to talk about is that lunar eclipse in Pisces. Now, I'll have a full video about this full moon lunar eclipse, but to put it succinctly, I see this as a culmination in how we have used precise language as a tool to lean into continual expansion and mystery. Now, the precise language is Mercury in Virgo at the time of this full moon eclipse. And the continual expansion is the full moon itself in Pisces. Pisces doesn't end. How we use language to let ourselves go on forever, basically, and be connected to some truth that is ironically inarticulable. The next thing is that the sun passes the south node on September 10th. What this means is that the full moon eclipse happens when the sun is before the node and the moon is before the nodes. So basically, this is an eclipse. The full moon eclipse in Pisces is balsamic to the lunar nodes, which means it's completing a cycle to the lunar nodes. It's completing a cycle to our personal fate and destiny in this life, which ultimately to me means that we are culminating something at this full moon that we have been working on for a long time. Whereas once the sun passes the south node on September 10th, we're finally in a new phase to the past. It doesn't mean the past goes away, but it means that we have a visceral sense, a visceral feeling that we're not behind anymore. We've ticked the boxes that we've needed to, and now we are moving towards new experiences and evolution. And this is simply because from this day, September 10th, till around March of 2026, the sun will be on its way to the North Node. Whereas between March 2025 and now, September 10th, the sun has been moving towards the South Node. So in this period, up until September 10th, we have been moving towards the past, and now we are moving towards the future. So I think that's really interesting, and I really love the South Node. I don't read it as a drain. The next thing, Venus, Mars, and their last quarter sextile. This is the final harmonious opportunity that we have within an existing relationship. And this existing relationship likely started around February of 2024. That's the last time that Venus, Mars made a conjunction to each other. Now they're in their last harmonious opportunity to one another before they make their conjunction to each other on January 7th, 2026, which is just nice. I just like a Venus-Mars sextile. The next is a new moon solar eclipse. It happens on September 21st. And because the sun and the moon at this eclipse will be in a new phase to the South Node, we are starting a new cycle with a specific practice. And this is the practice I started this video talking about, that is the detail work. It's the process that connects us to Pisces. This new moon solar eclipse is actually very close to forming a grand air trine. So even though it's in Virgo, it's at the very last degree of Virgo, which means it's 1 degree away from Libra. And that early degrees Libra enters this air trine between Uranus and Pluto. This new beginning in our practice also connects us to humanity and to our desired audience and our personal intention to communicate and grow that audience, to revolutionize the way we think, each and every one of us, because that is going to be the small pieces that end up literally transforming the definition of what it means to be a human on a collective level. That's essentially what I mean also about this grand air trine that the sun forms when it enters Libra on September 23rd. And then the last piece here is that Mars entering Scorpio. First of all, it's not just forming a last quarter square to Pluto, it's also forming a yod to Uranus and Neptune. This transit, Mars and Scorpio, is very personal. It's very secretive. It is extraordinarily intentional and can also be invisible, right? It's the type of action that might be in the shadows, but we are going to be feeling very compelled to act on something maybe we've been keeping a secret, or maybe something that's taboo, something that is dark. This is Mars and Scorpio. It could also be simply raw, visceral, sexual energy that needs to express itself to something new. Pluto and Aquarius, to a brand new idea, a brand new focusing point or object of your desire, a brand new audience for your raw, visceral, creative energy. And this is the type of square, which is a last quarter square. This last quarter square is about breaking free from the status quo. So this is another liberation signature where Mars and Pluto are finishing a cycle with each other. So we are breaking free from the way that Mars has been in a relationship with Pluto this whole time. So it's kind of like Mars knows there's more. Pluto knows there's more, but Mars needs to start acting in a different way to be open to the possibility that there is more. So yeah, I say taking premeditated action that feels necessary, transcend the status quo so that we can completely transform our community. So these are the 7 transits I think are most notable. But as we see, we have a whole month of specific transits that I can go through. You're welcome to screenshot or read this. Important that the month starts off with Saturn entering Pisces on a waxing moon. This Saturn returning to Pisces is just, we don't have any more structure. Of course we do. But the boss, proverbially here, Saturn is the boss, goes back into God. Until now, Saturn's been in Aries. We have been kind of our own gods. We've had to pull decisions out of the air and be like, this is what it is. Many of us are very done with climbing ladders, meeting goals in the old way. What happens though, once you decide that you're done with the old way, is that you're kind of left in a vacuum and you need to be the one authoring your own life in every single moment. And so I think Saturn in Aries really gave that baton to each of us. Neptune in Aries also gave that baton to each of us, kind of 100x'd the Saturn structure of you're in charge, and you're not even in charge of just like your life, but you're in charge of your entire structure of truth. What's true for you? I don't think we have any dreams right now. I think either our dreams have come true or we feel like it's impossible to create a new dream right now for the current state of the world that we're in. And that's the balsamic conjunction between Saturn and Neptune that will be in effect till the end of February of 2026. The second is really nice, I see, because we have this moon trine sun. This is always a nice, beautiful moment opportunity, especially the waxing trine is an opportunity to really meet this goal. Mercury in Virgo squaring Uranus in Gemini is big brain energy. It's kind of like an electrical storm. Because it's in the earth signs here, there's some like really tangible opportunity and a big brain energy to meet it, to match it. Yeah, you can read the next few of these. Yeah, this first week, Uranus is retrograde, and then we have the full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces. And I will be making a specific video about this, so just hold on, but just so you can see it in the context of the rest of the month. So we go into the second week. It's just like we're coming off of this full moon, but then the moon will go into Aries pretty quickly, and then the sun will be on the south node at the same time as the moon is with Chiron. And so there's something we're feeling, visceral healing effects or visceral pain, heightened sensitivity around our own identity in the context of this big practice that we finally feel like we've completed the work we needed to complete around. And then the next day we get this nice waning trine from Taurus to Virgo, moon in Taurus, when Mercury is conjunct the south node. So this is just another nice opportunity. There will be a message here. There will be a communication that seems to very clearly articulate what we need to know, what we already know. Because the moon's in Taurus, this is probably something that we want that's nice, that actually provides tangible value, not potential value, but tangible value to our life. This next piece is Mercury joining the sun in Virgo on the 12th, when moon is with Uranus. There's big brain energy this month. It's like otherworldly brain, and it's like the brain we've been avoiding, but then it finally catches up with us kind of energy. And then we get the last quarter moon, and I think by the 14th onward, we're going to be really preparing for this solar eclipse, the new moon. We have this Venus-Mars last quarter sextile mid-month. Mars will oppose Chiron. This will be certainly sticky, sensitive. Mars in Libra opposite Chiron can also be powerfully healing in a relationship. We have Mercury opposing Saturn. This is like us speaking to God again, because Saturn's in Pisces again. So we're going to have like a conversation with God mid-month. And then Mercury's going to enter Libra and activate this grand air trine. Venus will enter Virgo. Then a few days later, Mars enters Scorpio. So it's really like 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd, big moves happening. Even though the moon is really dark, there's a lot of shifts that take place in that new moon time. And I think it's a lot about us actually connecting to an audience and actually accepting the change of humanity outside of us and within ourselves. This last quarter square from Mars to Pluto is also at the apex of a yod between Neptune and Uranus. So on this day, moon will also be in Scorpio with Mars. This day, the 24th, is interesting. Likely very tuned in to the action that we need to take. And it's going to be a series of adjustments instead of just one action. Whenever Mars is in a yod, it's kind of like a domino effect of finally doing something that we know we've needed to do for a long time. It's kind of like you get the yod is called finger of God aspect. So God's basically pointing at this Mars and saying, it's time. Act on your desire, right? Mars and Scorpio, act on your desire. That's it. Fun because on the 25th, the moon will be late Scorpio, making a trine to North Node and Jupiter in the late water signs. And so we're going to get this much bigger in November, but I think we might taste it on the 25th and 26th. Big emotional opportunity, pretty much. The month ends with basically Moon Sagittarius squaring the nodes. So we might be feeling like a little like, which way do I go? But I think because Venus will be by the end of the month beginning its balsamic conjunction to the South Node, and Venus is like the last planet to do this pass out over the South Node, like I talked about with the Sun passing the South Node here earlier in the month, but Venus finally doing that for herself. Just very important. Something will be very, very clear by the end of the month, and that's thanks to the eclipse season. And what will be clear is, I think, something about relationships, right? We have Venus in Virgo on the South Node of the past. There's something, we're completing a chapter of past relationships, but that really ends up happening in October. We're kind of building up to it all month. I mean, there's so much happening. I think the biggest lesson is this lunar eclipse in Pisces, because this is the one that solidifies the fact that we don't have goals in the normal way anymore. We just need to continually expand and not hoard. We don't need to hold on to Pisces. That's not the point. We just need to be authentic and faithful to where we are directing our attention and energy, because ultimately Virgo is just about your attention and your energy and where you're placing your attention, because that's where you're devoting your life. So cool. As a side note, I've been really having a challenging time setting up. You can see I detached my mic from the stand because the stand, it got messed up, but I fully detached my mic, and then I was thinking about it and I said, oh, this is Uranus and Gemini. I liberated my communications. So that's all. Bye.